Before we really get started in the history of Town Money Saver, I'd really like to share a story with you that I'd like to think has really shaped the culture of what Town Money Saver is. And years ago when I was at Advo, every Friday we used to all go to lunch at this place called Cleveland PM. And there was a lot of business owners and other people there that you'd try to kind of hobnob with and so forth. And I didn't give it a lot of thought at the time, but one Saturday morning, my father-in-law was, he was a postmaster of Wellington. And one Saturday morning he asked, would I like to go to breakfast? Sure. We ended up at a place called the Wellington Inn. And while I was at this Wellington Inn for breakfast, these people would walk in and they'd know each other and say, hey Bob, how's the tractor? Hey Sally, how's the farm, the house, your aunt, your uncle? And that's when it really hit me that at the Cleveland PM, this was about what can I get out of other people? What can I take from them? And at the Wellington Inn, it was about knowing the other person and maybe what could I even give to that other person. And it was at that moment that it hit me that this is where I want to eat the rest of my life. I want to be at the Wellington Inn. I have no use for this Cleveland PM. And I'd really like to believe that in some part has shaped the culture of what Town Money Saver is today. And I believe going forward, that's going to be the real difference between us succeeding and transferring into a digital age and whatever other products that we develop, is that we always maintain that Wellington Inn atmosphere, that atmosphere of good neighbor, of selflessness and service. So that's why we thought we'd stop here, do just a little shot of this is actually, we're going to end here at the Wellington Inn where I had breakfast that morning. That again, I'd like to think has really shaped what Town Money Saver is. Back around 91, 92, as I said earlier, I had been selling Valpak, JB Dollar, Advo, and so forth. I started to have a relationship, become friends with the local manager here in Grafton at this Lorain County landmark. And that's really where Town Money Saver started. And what had happened is, after several visits, this manager started to explain to me that he thought something that could really help Grafton would be more of a hometown type of coupon mailer type format that would basically go to the local consumers of Grafton with local businesses. And I kind of blew the idea off at first. And then my neighbor had purchased this Bunny and Clyde's pizza, which happens to be on the first issue here of December of 92. And she started to explain a similar type of thing, that she felt nothing was really working for her and what could was too expensive. So this is really where the idea was born of Town Money Saver. When I just went around to a lot of the local businesses. Me and my wife were pretty social out here, so we knew the video store people and the coffee shop and so forth, and thought we'd see if they would want to try a few months of putting this local mailer together. So that's how things really got started, and we've been fortunate today to have the manager that I spoke with, and he's here to share some of his maybe perspective of how this all got started back then. So if we could, I'd like to introduce Mark at this time. And Mark, I don't know if you could explain, maybe had a couple questions. One would be, can you think back to any of the things that first kind of gave you the idea even, or what was happening that maybe wasn't working for you, that possibly might have contributed to putting together or at least suggesting the idea of Town Money Saver that you did?
Yeah, what had happened back in the early 90s, we were starting to get these big home centers built up. There was one in Elyria called DIY, that's kind of a modern day Home Depot, and other big chains were starting to move in. And Grafton's just been a small local town, and we were really worried that we were going to get swallowed up, all the local businesses. So what we did is we formed a merchants association. There was no chamber of commerce or anything like that, but all the owners of the small businesses got together and formed a merchants association. And in that talk, we were trying to figure out ways to reach out to the public to still advertise the small businesses around here and kind of do something on our own to keep the threat of the big guys taking us over. And that's what, when I met Bill Zirzow, when he'd stop in to buy his dog food, birdseed, etc., we had conversations about me doing advertising with who he was working for, and we kind of swayed away from that just because we didn't want to be with the big guys. We wanted just a small local. And through those conversations, we ended up basically coming up with this concept and moved forward from there.
And did Did you ever, I guess at what point, Mark, did you realize that there was something more to this maybe than just a casual conversation? When we first, I think the first mailer came out, again back here in '92, I don't remember that the results were anything that exciting, if I can recall, but by the third one in February, I think Mark had some pretty big results, and that's when even for me it hit that there's something more here than what we first thought. So I just wonder if you have any thoughts. At some point, do you recall early on, did something ever hit you that there was more here than maybe just this kind of throw together idea of just a casual conversation when now it was turned into something legitimate?
Yeah, I as being the manager of the store, I was also in charge of advertising. So I would advertise in the local newspapers. We did reach out in some of the bigger newspapers that were around. And, we'd put this ad together to see what would happen with Grafton Saver at that time. That was the name of it. And it had very favorable results right from the beginning. And of course, since it was kind of a concept that we came up, I was very excited about it. And for the next few months, we came up with some more aggressive offers, had a better layout, just progressed forward on getting, the better results. But I would say after time and we got it all figured out, it was the best advertising that we did locally here.
The inside probably don't look a lot different.
I think they have their left, but they're straight down on the left. They got better signage.
All right, hey, we had a nice surprise today. We're out obviously doing this film with a history of Town Money Saver. And of course we stopped into the Town and Country here in Grafton where things really all started. And we had the fortune of meeting Steve, who's the manager here. And just happened to be that we were explaining to him what we were doing and brought in some mailers. This is our December of '92 and February of '93. And he ends up sharing with us how it's probably been a while since they had been advertising with us. And, well, I'll let him tell the story briefly, I guess. But if you don't mind, Steve, just kind of share with us what you just shared with us, I guess.
Well, they were showing me a coupon that they had ran back in '92, and I was Joan, who is my rep for Town Money Saver, her and I got to talking about doing more of an advertising with you guys, and I wanted to decide on something that would work to see if it really was bringing customers into my store. And I ran a $5 off purchase with a purchase of 25, and I got about 60 of them back within a 3-week period. So it did work, and it worked back then. The funny little story is they ran the same ad back then, back in '92.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's what we're excited about. Here we are just stopping by accident and realized that the same coupon we run 20 years ago just had a big effect for Steve now, and looks like he might continue to do more with us now. So very excited to hear that and appreciate your time and doing this for us in the last minute. So thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember when this whole thing got started too. I was excited for Bill, and he kept coming home with these ideas. I talked to the pizza place lady, our neighbor, and she's like, come on, people were pushing him in town to start a mailer and do coupons because they didn't have the same things like that Bill had been selling. And he's like, maybe I could do this. And I just encouraged him, sure, go ahead, try it. Well, my heart dropped the first day he came home and he said, guess what? I got my first check. And I thought to myself, you actually took real money from these people? You've got to be kidding me. What if this doesn't work? We don't have the money to pay anybody back. So I was a little bit fearful, but I did the good wife thing and I didn't say anything. I tried to be supportive. Okay, let's see how this is going to go. And I remember sitting in Akron in the snow. We were up in Akron and he was still pasting things to a board, and I was a bit fearful, but he sent it off to the printer and it got out, and the clients did wonderful. And it was kind of exciting living in a small town and seeing how happy people were about what Bill did.
Here we are in front of the first Town Money Saver offices back in 1992, 93. Basically, me and my wife lived in this house at 1056 Main Street in Grafton, as you can hear, a busy road. And from about 1990 to 95, our first son Ben was born here in 94. And right behind me there, the computer and all the graphics was done in the main dining room. We could hide in our bedroom, was about the only place to hide, and then the offices were down in the basement. So at least for the first year or two, this is where everything came out of this house where we got started.
Okay, the other thing, I don't remember a whole lot about being in the house except working all the time and phone calls because I was kind of like a secretary too. You know, clients would call in and want to make changes. And some of the phone calls weren't that pretty, but you can ask me about that later. But one thing I do remember was like this thing was like my best friend. This held all the papers of everything that I needed to know. So my life just consisted whatever was on here. And then I also remember the waxer, which would burn you and you'd be waxing, peeling up, cutting. It was just some of the things that I remember about being in the house in Grafton. And we spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, I really appreciate Steve taking the time. Steve here has been here now over, how long you been here, Steve?
27 years.
27 years at the Sparkle Mart in Grafton, Ohio. This is really where Town Money Saver was launched. And really what happened was, what started as just a weekend project, about February of '93 though, here Steve offered, I think if I recall, and Steve can add to this, but Steve made a comment, I'm going to see who's really looking at this thing or reading it, and we're going to do something real aggressive here. So we ran a free dozen eggs to anyone that stopped in. Any chance you recall, Steve, kind of what happened to that?
It was a very good success. We wanted to see what a monthly, being that our ads are a weekly ad, we wanted to see what a monthly ad program would do and how many people actually covered it. So what we did was we did this test, like you said, with the large eggs. I don't remember what your circulation was back in, but I know we redeemed somewhere around 900 coupons.
Yeah,
And it was very good.
I think that, in fact, Steve almost got put out of business with egg costs.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think
we were caught short-handed there for a day or two, yeah.
Yeah, if I remember right, he even thought, well, let's see if we get 100 or something.
Right,
and
yeah.
So we mailed around 2,800 coupons at the time. When this happened, though, and when we had about 500 redeemed on the Rain County Landmark, that's really when we had to kind of pause and say, maybe there's something more here than just a weekend project. So
Right.
I really appreciate Steve taking the time today and being a client 20 years ago and helping launch Town Money Saver. Thanks,
Yeah,
Steve.
very good. Thank you, man.
So I think it was like in February, come in February, the Sparkle Mart got all these coupons back. Bill was really excited and he turned to me and said, you know, hey, if you think you could learn to do the ads on the computer, you could leave your job. And then maybe I could sell and you could do graphics. Well, I had always considered myself kind of an artist, kind of just for fun. It really wasn't that good, but I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome. So, so Bill bought a computer with what little money we had, took a loan out, bought this computer, brought it home, and then we just looked for somebody that could teach me how to do the ads on the computer. And it was scary. He ran around, sold ads, and I sat at home and tried to put grid lines on the computer and work this program. And finally it just came together. And it was a night and day thing, 7 in the morning to midnight. Go to bed, get up again at 6 in the morning, be working at the chair at 7. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved getting up and putting my sweatpants on and pulling my hair back in that 80s style that we did in the 80s and sit down at the computer with my coffee and just get to work. So it was there were a lot of good memories, a lot of scary memories, and feeling like I was putting my neck out and should I really be doing this, but it all seemed to pay off. And Bill was really happy. I mean, he had the freedom to go out and make things happen and talk to people, and we loved the people in Grafton, and it was our town, so it worked out great. And then we fell in love with Oberlin for the same reason. We opened our Oberlin market and fell in love with the people there too. So yeah, we were really blessed, and it was a really good time.
Thought we'd like to share with you where I would like to think that Town Money Saver really launched full time. As we said earlier, I started in Grafton, and once I left my job, my wife left her job, this happened to be the first place that I came to start the mailer full time, and that was the Oberlin Inn we're sitting in right now in Oberlin, Ohio. And the first person I met was Rex Engel, who we're going to talk to in a minute. And this happened to be the very first mailer, April of '93. And what's so significant, I guess, is, needless to say, I was pretty nervous and scared about what we were about to do. And to be able to meet Rex first and have him, well, I'll let him tell you, but his response pretty much set the tone. And from then on, here we are 20 years later. So if we could turn over to Rex here and introduce you. And thank you, Rex, for taking the time to meet with us today. And
Bill, I'm glad to take the time to meet with you today, and I can certainly remember when you came in back in '93, that first day, you had talked a little bit about what you had done in Grafton. I think 1 month, I think you had put one mailer out, and then you decided that it was time to expand already. And I decided that we would certainly try it, and as you can see, it was a good hit. We were very pleased with the results of that first mailer, and it certainly has grown over the years, because I think this was, what, one page, or one fold, and now it's a multi-fold.
when you first did it, what did you kind of did you almost thought, well, I'll be nice to this guy and throw him a bone here, or did you expect the results, or just maybe your reaction after the first 1 or 2 mailers came out?
Well, I think that we had done some research about direct mailing pieces, but there was never anything that was done locally. It was all more county-wide. And I think that we had never done the county-wide thing because we didn't think that it would hit the market where we needed it to be hit right here in Oberlin. So I think that having discussed that with our sales team, I think that we thought, what have we got to lose in that first deal? You know, it's 1 month and we were only on a month-to-month contract. So it was, what did we have to lose? Well, we certainly didn't lose anything. We had to gain, because I can remember you coming back the following month and asking how many coupons of this had come in and how many coupons of that had come in. And I think that you were astounded a little bit as well at some of the number of those coupons that I told you. And I don't remember what that number was now, but it had grown and it continued to grow. And now it's plateaued, as I often, but we still get a good number of coupons on a regular month. So I know that it still works in that regard. So I think it was a win-win for both of us in that regard.
Yeah, I think again, you've said everything for today, and the main thing is we really appreciate your business, and thank you for, like I said, almost 20 years later, still an advertiser with Town Money Saver. And so unless we have anything else, I'd like to thank Rex for the time today and his 20 years of being a customer. Thank you, Rex.
Thank you, Bill. It's been a pleasure.
All right. If you happen to notice, right behind me is Lou's Pizza in Grafton, Ohio. And that's really what, right above Lou's Pizza, became Town Money Saver's second offices. And still some of my fondest memories. It was a great looking office up there, had a lot of character. Probably from 1994 to 96, 7 in there is when we had the offices up there. That's when we had Becky as a graphic designer. Obviously my wife was in charge of design. Mark came on as a sales rep. We had a couple other sales reps. In fact, I think as part of the story I was going to tell was, when this thing first happened, and around that February of 93, when the 900 coupons came in, for instance, on that Sparkle Mart ad, I thought I'd struck gold. And I thought this would be the easiest thing in the world. We're just going to run around to all these little towns like Grafton and open these mailers. Well, needless to say, I was wrong at the time. And soon after, in fact, I had my brother-in-law Chuck and his friend Jim and anybody and their brother out selling ads. Well, within 6 months, we realized that wasn't going to do it. And it really we had to take a step back and realize the amount of training and the knowledge of the product that was required to really make the product work. One of the key points I just wanted to make at this time, though, was, in retrospect, the combination of the targeting of Valpak, the convenience, or I should say the options of Advo with inserts and so forth, and the magazine shelf life of the JB Dollar are really the ingredients from my past experience that became the Town Money Saver product. And what I really set out to do when Mark from Landmark and my neighbor from Bunny and Clyde's had first requested a product like this, in retrospect, we were trying to do an affordable, effective product. When they hand you a few $100s, or handed me a couple $100s at the time, we had to make them money. I had to make them money. And that's really what put this whole thing together, and what instinctively, from my experience, which at the time I didn't really realize, just sort of threw it together thinking it'd be a weekend project, kind of a car payment, quite honestly, is what I first thought. So needless to say, you're all sitting here today because it was much more than that, but this is some of the ingredients that really have shaped what we are today.
Once we moved the office from the house in Grafton over to Lou's Pizza in Grafton, things really seemed to kind of step it up. I was pregnant, I was excited about being a mom, I was excited about Town Money Saver, but I was more excited about being a mom. And so we knew that we were going to need some other people to help with the graphics. Up to that point, I had been doing it. And I believe Mark Gaylor had come on from Landmark at that time, so we had more ads coming in. And we had a couple other salespeople involved. So we got a gal named Becky to come in, and I taught her how to do the graphics on the computer and the cut and paste. And we added another gal, and the whole time being pregnant. And then, of course, I thought, oh, well, the baby will be little, and I'll still be able to do ads. So I came in. After Ben was born, I just brought Ben to the office. And really, my memory of Lou's Pizza is sitting at my computer, bouncing the baby on my knee, singing zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. I was a walking, talking Walt Disney musical in the office. So thank God Becky was very respectful of that. I'm sure that probably drove her crazy. But we had a lot of fun. I mean, it was just a really great, exciting time.
All right, what I want to show you next is an office that we were in around that 97, sort of 96, 98 in that time frame. While we weren't here that long, this is where a lot of things kind of happened that really shaped where we're at today. And when I say that, unfortunately, it was kind of the low point. And what I mean by that is from 93, let's say I had 100,000 in sales, 94, 300,000 in sales, 95, we had about 600,000 in sales. That's when I moved to Lucas, Ohio. And what happened when we moved there, I was a little overconfident and felt that this thing was rolling. And we were had some salespeople and so forth. That was kind of the structure at that time. We had salespeople, designers. We worked out of that office in Lucas and then here. Well, I got all sidetracked into pygmy farming and the whole farm thing. And next thing you know, things aren't going so well. And we sort of plateau. Well, when you're growing at that kind of level and you plateau, it feels like you're falling off a cliff. So needless to say, as I'm in this office right here, things they're starting to sort of come apart a little bit for us. So not a very good time. When things really hit the bottom was actually, unfortunately, I don't want to associate with the birth of my daughter, but my daughter Abby was born May 7th of 1997.
So when we moved our offices to Lodi, we had a graphic designer, and about 2 weeks before I was ready to give birth to Abby, she left. And so Bill was really stuck, and he was going to go to print, and he said, I need you to come in the office. So I was huge, because I was always huge when I gave birth, and I came in and was doing the ads, and I was sitting there one day doing the ads, and about 2 weeks and about 2 days before print for Bill, and I'm trying to get these ads done, these last minute things, and I thought, I think I might be going into labor. So I said something to Bill, and Bill's like, well, you couldn't be going into labor. And I said, I think I'm going into labor. So we made a few phone calls, called the hospital. They're like, you better come in. Bill was just griping the whole way from Lodi to Ashland. What am I going to do? What are we going to do? What if we get there and you're not in labor? Because you know what? I need you at the office doing these ads. So how could you be in labor? And I said, Bill, we'll work it out. We'll see if I'm not in labor. We'll go back to Lodi. We got to the hospital. I was in labor. Bill leaned over top of me and said to the nurse, exactly how long do you think this is going to take? Oh, boy. I just looked up at him while lying in the bed, and I said, this is going to take as long as it needs to take. And then I think Bill realized what he had said. So, yeah, Abby was born at 2 in the morning. Bill said, I kissed the baby, said, I love you, and he left. And called me the next day. He was at the office, and he had to call in some backup people. He did some cutting and pasting to make the ads work, and he got the mailer out. But didn't spend a whole lot of time with me at the hospital when Abby was born. But I understood because I had worked in that situation with him, and I was behind him, and that's what you have to do when you're in that position. Nobody else is going to do it for you. So, but we did have our beautiful blessing, Abby. You can see her. That's when she was little.
So needless to say, I was so concerned about getting to print. My own daughter's birth was almost second to that at this time. Well, you can imagine, then right after she's born, a couple days, we go home for a day or two. Next thing you know, we've got to rush her to Akron Children's Hospital. In fact, she's been taken in an ambulance, and I spend the next few days at Ronald McDonald House. So we were thankful that nothing really was wrong, but they had a positive reading and so forth. wanted to tell you this story sitting in the car because this is where things really hit the bottom. And shortly after my daughter's birth, which I kind of explained what happened there, I happened to go into a client in Ashland, which at the time I'm barely making it in Ashland. You know, I had another market, North Ridgeville's doing very well for me, but Ashland's barely hanging on. Nothing's going the way I had thought or anticipated with this new dealership program and so forth. So I'm really struggling, and I walk into this agri-market. He's running a full page every month, and he tells me he's going to skip the summer. So many of you have probably been there. I mean, externally, I don't think he knew anything going on. Internally, I completely disintegrated and melted. And as far as I was concerned, I'm done. I'm done with Town Money Saver. I completely screwed up this gift that I'd been given. It's time for me to go home and get a job. So I literally left there, even was thinking about what classified ads I could find, look for a job. But I decided to pull off, thank God, into this park. So as I said, thank God I decided to pull over in this park in Ashland, Ohio, from that agri-market and stop myself. And I sat in a car much smaller than this one and cried like a little girl, literally, so embarrassed to say that, but all I could think of is I got a 1-year-old at home and a newborn baby, a 2-year-old, a newborn baby, and I've totally screwed this whole thing up. So at that moment, I sat here, didn't know what to do, and I really just had to finally kick myself in the butt and say, quit your whining and get back out and somehow make this thing happen. And from then on, it was just all hours. That's all I knew how to do to fix this. I've told many of you in training, to this day, it's the only thing I know how to fix things. You put the hours in, you work hard, you make it happen. And thank God, and that's why we're sitting here today, because at that moment, I was ready to cash it in. All right, here we are. This is in Avon, Ohio. And one of the big mysteries of Town Money Saver is, when did Fred really start with Town Money Saver? We're not really sure, but in that 97 to 99 time frame is in the bigger scheme of things, this is when things really started to turn for Town Money Saver, and we entered into this dealer network type of system, and Fred was a big part of that all happening. So around the time like Fred came on, we had Brenda Maston, Kim Mayhall, Georgia Packwood. Anyone else you could think of, Fred, at the time?
Mark Gaylor, and let's see, who else do we?
Well, Mark had been here, and
Kim McCullish.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kim. Yeah, it was really Kim McCullish, Brenda, Georgia, Fred, all around that time, kind of came out. So you can imagine to go from just me and Mark and maybe about 10 markets, all of a sudden it exploded. And it was right here in this building behind us that we would spend many long nights going to print. I don't know, Fred, if you could, anything in particular remember from those days of going to print?
Yeah, you're chasing me around the shop trying to get things done.
All right, that sounds a little creepy, but all right. That's
Well, you used to come in late. You used to come in about 7, 8 o'clock at night, and of course we were never ready on time.
That's true,
We
yeah.
were waiting for Kim Mayhall, and Brenda Massa was always right here, right on time, but Kim Mayhall was always late, which is no surprise to anybody nowadays.
Probably still today is late.
Yeah, and we used to run around the shop trying to get things. Of course, I had another business to run at the same time, but we did a lot of print nights here.
Yeah, Fred had a print shop here, so he did a lot of local printing, dealt with a lot of the same customers that he ended up doing with. In fact, it was his own product that he was doing before Town Money Saver. In fact, I think you said it was even a college paper you had done or something. So really, even Fred, we kind of all merged together in a sense, and yeah, it's called the Avon Advertiser, right?
Yeah, but my expenses went up an awful lot when I started doing it with you.
It was just
my printing costs were cheaper.
My good looks and chasing around is why Fred came on. It wasn't the price of the book, that's for sure. But no, obviously that was the whole point. We were trying to save Fred some money, also sell ads into each other's areas, which was a huge thing right away. I think we both benefited from that. So Fred's wife, Connie, had a lot to do with that at the time. I remember getting to see her all the time, and I don't know if she was that excited to see us a lot of times, but she was here working.
No, yeah, she did a lot of the graphic design work for us back then, too. She was doing some graphic design work for Brenda, for Kim Mayhall, and of course my books, too,
yeah.
At the same time.
And really, we won't probably have time to go there, but just down the street is Fred's house where he lived, and I think pretty much from here it went to your house, right?
Yeah, I think at one time we would go to print night with about 12 or 14 books, because Mark Ruggiero,
yeah, Mark.
We were doing the graphic design work for Mark Ruggiero.
And Kirk.
And
Seeger.
Bill Blair, Kim Mayhall still, Brenda
Yeah, that's
Maston.
right. Yeah, so it was all a long time then that we were going to print. It turned eventually into like a few places. Like, so at Fred's house we'd meet, then we go to the next stop and the next stop. But next we're going to take you down to BW3, and that's where for the longest time after that it kind of consolidated that one location. So I think we got a few of our current franchisees that were with us then waiting on us, and so I guess we'll see you down there. Thanks a lot, Fred, for meeting us up here.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on board. I think a lot of you can appreciate what going to print's like at Town Money Saver and how it affects your life. Well, imagine before electronic, we used to go to print hard copy. In other words, we'd literally print out a couple pages of the color subs. Like usually then were two colors, you'd have a black and a color plate. We're going to show you in a minute what that looked like. But the point is, for about 5 years, from 2000 to 2005, right over my shoulder is where this always happened. It's BW3 here in Medina, Ohio. And there's a lot of stories that happened in this place. I think we're going to hear a couple, and maybe in the room hear a couple more today. So we thought we just wanted to sort of reenact what things were like back in the day when we all went to print hard copy. So I guess we're going to kind of walk over to the table and we'll kind of show you what this is like. And you can imagine the way weather could affect something like this. So usually me and Mark, though, we weren't able to enjoy ourselves with beers and relaxation. We were just in the middle of getting ready for a really intense night, which a lot of times didn't end till like 3 in the morning. So first thing I'm going to do is, if you want to come over here to Mark, and he can maybe kind of show you and explain a little bit about just how we would actually go to print. There you go, Mark, so you can just show him.
Whoa. So going to print, everybody would bring an envelope with their mailer in it. We would have another envelope with out-of-market ads. And so we would just spread everything out. This would be the Marysville mailer. We would have the ads that franchisee sold. Then you would go through and say, okay, well, here's an ad from another franchisee. So I would go through Kirk's Hutchinson's Market, or his envelope, find Gale House. You'd have two colors, or color separation, so you'd get these, put them in order, get rid of that. There's another ad from Kirk. Grab that ad, make sure it's in the right spot, get rid of that, make sure there's nothing else missing in the mailer. So once you add all those ads for a complete mailer, you just finish it off and put it over to the side so you didn't get anything confused.
Hope that no one spills a beer on it.
No one spills a beer on it or pancake syrup. And then you just move on to the next mailer and just spend the entire night just making sure you completed each one of the markets with out-of-market ads. Once it was done, paper clip it, put it on the pile, and then our printer would send a truck driver, Norm. He would meet us up here about midnight to 2 in the morning. He'd bring up his old little truck. We'd load up all the inserts that we had, give him a briefcase with all of our mailers, and he'd be on his way. They would take everything down, shoot film of it, and then by 6 in the morning try to have everything up on press.
We also, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kirk, for the applause for Mark. And then we also gave checks to each other that night. So you can imagine this table full of checks. Did someone bring some checks? Or?
As well as collecting checks.
I forgot my checkbook.
Nobody. Oh yeah.
I paid you
Can
last
I mail
week.
it? Can I mail it?
Yeah.
Has
No,
to
we're
be
checks in the
postmarked.
mail. So you can imagine too, we're trying to redistribute checks as well as go to print on the same night.
And we did out-of-market checks and we did corporate checks.
Everything was
Yeah. So we were here for the corporate checks.
I usually
but
try to be very, when I come here, very strict with myself. I usually wouldn't drink any beers until I get everybody their checks and marks the books. And then I'd maybe have my first beer.
Really? Then the
Yeah.
celebration began, right?
Yeah.
what about getting the
Yeah, that took him about 2 minutes.
As I said earlier, we had a lot of funny stories of things that might have occurred here. And what the heck, we got one, I'll never forget Rick's first print night.
First one.
So I don't know if Rick minds sharing this, but one of the better stories that I got to sit through.
I had never met these people before. It was Bill and Paul, and they had some kind of conflict, and it almost turned into a fist fight right at the table on the very first night. That was my introduction to print night.
All I remember is
didn't he bring a gun that night with him?
Oh gosh, I don't know, but
Wasn't that the night he brought the gun with him?
He said he had
saw
one.
a gun.
did he? Oh my gosh.
Claim-
Because they
yeah.
could see a weapons license at the time.
Well, I remember
Claim.
sitting across, just to get a little more detail, Rick was sitting across from me here. Bill Blair was here, Paul Genitals, and like Rick said, they had a little difference. And at the end, the funny part that I remember was Bill reaches out to shake Paul's hand, and Paul refuses to shake his hand, so Bill slaps the table, everything falls off, and walks out. And I just look up and see Rick's first print night, and look at Rick and think, "Oh my God, is he gonna?
What did
are
I
you gonna
get
stick
into?"
around?" Yeah. So that was definitely a memorable night. 99 is the earliest one I have with Fred, but Kim was.
Next month, he started coming.
I remember that, yeah.
All right, well, hey, thanks everybody for sharing those stories. Hopefully you guys enjoyed them that weren't here, and the ones that were kind of brings back some memories. Obviously, like we said, that was through about 2005, and since then we've been electronic print. So I think we're going to kind of tell you a little bit about that.
So then Bill moved the office from Lodi to her house in Lucas. And I thought, this is awesome. I'm going to see him more. He's going to be around, because we hadn't seen very much of each other. And I honestly don't even remember necessarily the timeline. I was still doing ads for Bill in our house. Our whole dining room were like, there were 3 of these huge white tables, and I still had the pasting stuff up and doing ads like after the kids went to bed at night was the time I did it. And thinking I'd see him all this time, he still was out and about. Late at night, I'd be there doing ads by myself.
Here we are actually at my house in Lucas, and this is where, believe it or not, the offices were from around 99 to 2000. And as we were telling you the story earlier, as we restructured into a dealership network, it kind of turned into a downsizing and looked more out at freelance and outsourcing. So as a result, the offices really moved to what is now my son's bedroom upstairs in this house. And that was around 99, 2000, which during that time is when I think Kurt Cutchison, John Kolar, and Rick Wagen came on board. And it was really the seed that kind of turned into what it is today, because as we go to the next stop in town, that's when we started rehiring and rebuilding the structure that you have today. Well, here we are in the basement of the current building, which happened to be our offices around 2000, 2001. At that time, there was a wall here, and you'd kind of walk through a doorway here. This was kind of a nasty area again, but quite honestly, it was when things started to really come out of the hole again. It was when I had to hire someone again. We had Jeannie Hopkins. Poor Jeannie used to have to freeze her butt off sitting right over here all the time while I was usually in the road running around. Also during this time, Blaine Drake came on board, Mark Ruggiero came on board as a dealer, and Bob Seeger came on board. So this is at the time when the current Town Money Saver probably really started to kind of crawl back out of the depths from that 07 time, or that 97 time. All right, well here we are at what would be considered the third Lucas location for the office. Just coming from the basement, this was a big move up here. We got some windows, which were exciting. But behind me, you see where we were at for almost 9 years. From around 2002, early 2002 to late 2010. A lot happened during that time. In fact, most of you in the room came on board while we were in that offices. Mark Ruggiero came on as operations. Heidi came on. A couple big things happened. During 03 to 05 is when we really doubled in size. I mean, we added like 60 new markets during that time. A very exciting time to be here when things really came together. But unfortunately in 06, we hit really our second kind of low point, and especially with the loss of Blaine Drake that many in the room know. And around April that year, Blaine passed away by an unfortunate accident, and many of us were affected deeply by that and still are. But what also happened is we shut down about 16, 17 markets. And in retrospect, it seemed to be that rapid growth, we really couldn't support it. So as a result, and I think we're just now getting to experience some of the results of the efforts we had to take to correct that. So really around 06, 07, we really had to sit back and start to look at a better support mechanism, better training, and how we were doing things in the field. The other couple big things that happened were in 2005, we went to electronic print, which was a big deal, especially as you saw how we went to print hard copy. And we had a good year that it took for that to happen, that transfer to go from printing hard copy to doing everything fully digital online. In fact, I think Mark shared with us last night that I forgot for like 2 months we duplicated hard copy and electronic, which was a lot of effort and a very difficult time. But needless to say, that laid the groundwork for where we are today, and to be able to do full color printing and now even coated stock that we're going into. So that 05 time we went full color, big move for us then. And then we also franchised during 05. So another big learning lesson to go through the process that we just now seem to be getting our hands around and are able to start to, I think, have a system together to launch forward. So again, from like about 02 to 010, like I said, many of you in this room came on board during this time. This was the largest part of our company's history and growth. And I'm going to show you next how exciting it is where we are now, and I think going forward what's going to shape the future. And as you can see, coming to Town Money Saver now, we take attitude determines altitude literally. So every morning we get a little taste of that as we get to come up these long staircase into work. And I just want to get to show you around an office that we're very excited about. Just got to move in here about this time last year. So all the new franchisees have been here, have been able to see this, haven't seen some of the other offices we've had. But as you can see, just want to show you, this is where Heidi, many of you have talked to Heidi, I'm sure, and like to see where she works from. And
Hi, everybody.
thank you, Heidi Coons. And then if we step back here a little bit, you'll see the operations director, Mark Ruggiero, back there. Mark, it's a nice big window. You can see everything going on. And we have, this is the rest of the office. We're going to take you around the whole office, but just to give you, before we kind of wrap up, show you a little bit back here. A lot of training goes on back there. There's a break room and so forth. Here's Rachel Addington, just recently started with us. Hey Rachel, thanks a lot. All right, well, kind of in conclusion of this tape, I just want to say how excited that we are for not only being in these new offices that are really fun to kind of show off and work in, but also for the year that we just had in 2011. To finally get back to 20 markets of growth, only closing 4 markets, going full electronic, paperwork and so forth. So it feels as if things are really back into that swing again that we're coming up. And mainly I just really love to thank everybody in this room for the sacrifice, for the risks that you're taking with us and sharing in this ride. Love to have my wife come over, and she wanted to say a couple things. And I'd love to thank my wife. Without her, we wouldn't have been doing this and had this company started. So Cindy, if you'd like to say something.
Yeah, I'd like to say the same thing really Bill just said. Thank you so much for your dedication, hard work, the risks that you take, for representing Town Money Saver in such a professional way. We appreciate all that you've done to also help make this company grow. And good luck to all of you for many years to come. Just great success and good luck.
Thanks a lot. Good
Thank
luck
you.
for the next 20 years, and we'll see you at casino night.
All right.